I killed my marriage with kindness, and my wife repaid me by f***ing another man in the woods. 18 years. That's how long I believed in the lie of our marriage. 18 years of double shifts at Allegheny Steel, my hands cracked and calloused. So Stephanie could have her monthly spa days at that place downtown where they charged $90 for cucumber water and a hot towel. 18 years of surprise weekend getaways, she'd acknowledge with a distracted smile before burying her face back in her phone. 18 years of cooking dinner for a woman who ate in silence, thumbs tapping out messages to God knows who while. I tried to tell her about my day. That's the thing about devotion. It blinds you. When Stephanie had the flu 3 winters ago, I learned to braid her hair because she couldn't lift her arms above her shoulders. I memorized her coffee order. Iced vanilla latte with oat milk, 1 pump of caramel, light ice. I gave up my hunting trips with the guys because she said the empty house made her feel lonely, though she never seemed to mind when I worked those weekend shifts that paid for her shoe collection. The changes weren't subtle. They were calculated. Humiliations. She started leaving rooms when I entered them like my presence contaminated the air. She'd roll her eyes when I told stories about work, once muttering under her breath, "Nobody cares, Eric," when I described saving a colleague from a serious machinery accident. The comments started small. My friend Jen's husband just made partner at his firm, or Sarah's husband takes her to New York twice a year, always followed by that sidelong glance that said, "And what have you done with your life?" Most nights I'd reach for her hand while we watched TV, and she'd let me hold it for exactly 30 seconds before suddenly needing to use the bathroom or check something in the kitchen. The intimacy died so slowly I barely noticed, and then, all at once, it was gone. "I'm just tired," she'd say, her nightly mantra for 6 straight months. When we did have intimacy, always initiated by me, always in the dark, she'd shower immediately after, scrubbing herself like she was removing evidence. I found the lingerie in her drawer last spring. Black lace with the tag still on. $100 scraps of fabric she never wore for me. Once, I came home early and caught her practicing different laughs in the bathroom mirror. Not her real laugh. I hadn't heard that in years, but something performative and musical, meant for someone else's ears. Still, I persisted. I bought her flowers on random Tuesdays. I left notes in her purse. I researched recipes she might like. I scheduled couples massages she'd cancel at the last minute. I renovated the master bathroom with the exact tiles she'd pointed out in a magazine. I kept trying because that's what you do when you love someone. You try until your hands bleed, and your pride is ground to dust. Last Friday, Stephanie announced her 3rd girls' night this month. She leaned against the kitchen counter, eyes fixed on her phone, smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Sarah's having us all over for wine and tapas," she said without looking up. "Don't wait up." She kissed my forehead that night like she was kissing a corpse. I should have known she was already planning my funeral. The GPS tracker was a small black rectangle, no bigger than a matchbox. I bought it with cash from a place called Electronic Solutions 2 towns over, where the guy behind the counter didn't ask questions and I didn't volunteer information. It slipped perfectly into the lining of Stephanie's favorite purse, the one she took everywhere, the Prada bag I'd saved for 6 months to buy her for our 15th anniversary. I became my wife's shadow. Every day, I'd use my bathroom breaks. At work, to check her location on my phone, watching the little red dot move across town, comparing her whereabouts with the stories she told me. I kept a composition notebook in my toolbox, documenting every lie in neat columns, what she said versus where she actually was. The methodical record-keeping kept me sane, transforming my hurt into something cold and analytical. The patterns emerged quickly. Her girls' nights always aligned with my late shifts. Her shopping trips to the outlet mall 40 minutes away often included unexplained stops at the Marriott downtown. And Sarah, the friend who supposedly hosted these gatherings, had posted photos from a Florida beach during 2 of Stephanie's alleged visits to her house. I lost myself in the investigation. I'd stare at the ceiling at night, Stephanie breathing softly beside me, and calculate driving distances between locations, trying to account for the missing minutes in her day. I'd check her mileage against the trips she claimed to take. I memorized her schedules and routines until I knew her movements better than she did. My obsession left physical marks. My work shirts hung loose where they'd once been tight across my chest. Dark circles formed permanent shadows under my eyes. I'd catch myself standing in the shower for 20 minutes, lost in scenarios and calculations, the water running cold. Then, I discovered she'd been researching divorce lawyers. I found the search history when she left her laptop open one morning, consultations with 3 different attorneys, all specializing in high-asset divorces. The next week, I noticed she'd been photographing our furniture, our appliances, even the tools in my garage. She was cataloging our assets. The coffee shop meeting confirmed everything. I took a rare personal day and followed her to Cornerstone Cafe, where she met a man in a charcoal suit who spread papers across the table while she nodded and took notes. Not her type physically, too old, too polished, but clearly her divorce attorney. They spoke for an hour while I sat across the street in my truck, taking photos with the zoom lens I'd bought for wildlife photography. My research became more sophisticated. I recorded her phone calls when I was supposedly at work, but actually sitting in the driveway. I discovered she'd been telling our friends that I was controlling, that I monitored her spending. I never did. That I had anger issues. I didn't. She was building a narrative where she was the victim, laying groundwork for sympathy when she eventually left me. The psychological toll crushed me from the inside out. I dropped 30 pounds in 2 months. I started keeping a bottle of Jack Daniels in my work locker. I'd find myself parked outside our house, unable to go in, imagining them together, Stephanie and whoever he was, laughing about the pathetic husband working double shifts to pay for their rendezvous. At night, I'd lie awake fantasizing about confrontations. Sometimes I'd imagine calmly presenting my evidence like a prosecutor, watching her crumble under the weight of her lies. Other times, the scenarios were darker, bursting in on them together, my rage finally finding its target. But always, some rational part of me held back, knowing that acting without complete information would only give her the upper hand. Then came last Thursday. Stephanie announced she was celebrating Sarah's promotion with the girls downtown. But as I watched the red dot on my phone, it bypassed the restaurant district entirely and headed toward the mountains, deep into the state forest where cell service barely reached. I followed that red dot into the darkness, knowing that whatever I found would either save my marriage or destroy us both. The mountain roads twisted like snakes, each turn taking me deeper into unfamiliar territory. My hands shook violently against the steering wheel, adrenaline flooding my system as I followed Stephanie's signal through the navigation app. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the October chill, and twice I had to pull over when my vision blurred. The GPS led me to a gravel road unmarked on any map, barely visible between dense pines. The signal stopped moving at what appeared to be a small clearing about a mile ahead. I killed my headlights and parked a half-mile back, behind an abandoned hunting blind that would hide my truck from anyone traveling the road. The forest floor was soft and yielding under my steel-toed work boots, wet leaves muffling my approach. Each step required conscious effort. Part of me wanted to run back to my truck and drive until I crossed state lines, pretending I'd never seen the evidence mounting against my marriage. But I kept moving forward, guided by the faint glow of light through the trees ahead. The cabin materialized slowly, a modest A-frame with a wide porch and large windows, the kind of place wealthy people rent for authentic mountain experiences. A silver Audi was parked beside Stephanie's Lexus in the gravel driveway. I recognized that car. I'd seen it in the insurance company parking lot when I'd surprised Stephanie with lunch last summer. Dave Mitchell's car. The regional manager she'd mentioned casually over the years, always with that slight flush in her cheeks I'd chosen to ignore. I circled the property, staying within the tree line until I found a vantage point with a clear view through the picture windows. The interior lights were dimmed, but I could see everything with perfect, excruciating clarity. Stephanie wore the red dress I'd bought for our anniversary, the one she'd claimed was too fancy for anywhere we go. Her hair was styled in loose waves the way she knew I liked it, and she'd put on the diamond earrings that had been my Christmas gift 3 years ago. She was beautiful in a way that seemed weaponized against me, every detail of her appearance. A deliberate choice meant for another man's appreciation. Dave Mitchell was younger than me, leaner, with the kind of confident posture that came from boardrooms instead of factory floors. He moved with easy grace as he poured wine into crystal glasses. Our crystal glasses, I realized with a jolt. The set we'd received as a wedding gift that Stephanie had packed for polishing last week. They danced to music I couldn't hear, her arms wrapped around his neck, her head resting against his chest. She laughed. Not the practiced laugh I'd caught her rehearsing, but her real laugh, the one I hadn't heard in years. She fed him strawberries from a bowl on the counter, her fingers lingering against his lips. When they kissed, it wasn't the perfunctory pecks she'd been giving me. It was deep and hungry, her body melting into his with familiar ease, my chest constricted so tightly I couldn't breathe. The pain was physical. A vice crushing my ribs, acid burning up my throat, my pulse throbbing in my ears like a countdown to explosion. I tasted copper and realized I'd bitten through the inside of my cheek. Through the partially open window, their voices carried clearly in the mountain air. "Does he suspect anything?" Dave asked, his hands sliding down to the small of her back. Stephanie's laugh was brittle glass. "Eric? God, no. He's pathetic, still bringing me those cute little gifts, thinking he can fix whatever's wrong," she replied with casual cruelty. She shook her head. "He actually braided my hair when I was sick. Can you imagine? Like I'm a little girl at summer camp." Dave pulled her closer. "How much longer do we have to wait?" he whispered. "The papers are almost ready," she answered, tracing his jawline with her finger. "Once everything's filed, I'll get the house, half his pension, and enough alimony to make sure we're comfortable. I'll be free soon." "What about the Denver offer?" Dave asked. "Regional VP position. We could start fresh." Stephanie's response cut through me like a serrated blade. "I can't wait to start fresh somewhere he'll never find me," she purred. I sank to my knees in the wet leaves, my phone clutched in my hand as I mechanically recorded video of their betrayal. My finger hovered over 911. I imagined the satisfaction of watching police cruisers arrive, emergency lights painting the trees red and blue, their perfect evening shattered by handcuffs and questions. But some survival instinct stopped me. Breaking. Down that door would make me the villain in her carefully constructed narrative, the unstable, controlling husband who stalked his wife. In a divorce court, I'd be crucified. I'd lose everything. So I knelt there in the darkness, documenting my own destruction, forcing myself to watch as 18 years of marriage burned to ash before my eyes. When they moved to the bedroom, I finally turned away. There are some things even a dying man doesn't need to witness. I thought watching her betray me was the worst pain I'd ever feel. I was about to learn how wrong I could be. I didn't sleep. How could I? I sat at our kitchen table. All night the house achingly quiet, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's betrayal. I laid everything out in methodical rows, printed GPS maps showing her movements over 6 months, screenshots of Sarah's Florida vacation posts contradicting Stephanie's alibis, photos of the cabin, and the damning video of my wife in another. Man's arms. By dawn, I had a roadmap for destruction. I'd copied all our financial records going back 5 years. I'd researched the top 3 divorce attorneys in the county and planned to call the best one the moment their office opened. I'd even drafted an email to a private investigator, attaching video clips that would make my case irrefutable. But at 6:47 a.m., as the first gray light filtered through the kitchen blinds, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed Regional Medical Center. "Mr. Lawson?" A woman's voice, professionally neutral. "This is Nurse Chambers from Regional Medical. Your wife, Stephanie Lawson, has been admitted following an incident. She's in stable condition, but doctors have asked that you come in as soon as possible," she explained. My first reaction wasn't concern or fear. It was cold, detached curiosity. about whether I was about to become a widower. "What kind of incident?" I asked, my voice steady, a pause. "A domestic incident involving firearms. The police are here and would like to speak with you as well," she replied carefully. The regional medical center was a sprawling complex of beige buildings connected by glass walkways. I parked in the visitor's lot, my mind oddly clear. Whatever had happened at that cabin, whatever domestic incident had put Stephanie in the hospital, had nothing to do with me. I was merely an observer now, watching the final act of a play I hadn't written. A stocky man in a rumpled suit intercepted me in the lobby, flashing a detective's badge. "Mr. Lawson, Detective Ray Coleman, County Sheriff's Department. Let's talk before you see your wife," he said. He led me to a small consultation room with outdated motivational posters and the lingering smell of antiseptic. What he told me over the next 15 minutes sounded like divine justice served by someone else's hand. Sandra Mitchell, Dave's wife of 22 years, had been tracking her husband for months, just as I had been tracking Stephanie. She discovered the affair, found the cabin, and last night she decided that if she couldn't have her marriage, nobody would. Mrs. Mitchell arrived at the cabin around 2:30 a.m., Detective Coleman explained, checking his notes. According to her statement, she'd been planning this for weeks. She brought a .38 revolver registered in her name and a file containing evidence of the affair. She kicked in the front door, shouting, and I'm quoting directly here, 22 years! You bastard! The detective cleared his throat. Mrs. Mitchell fired 4 shots. 2 hit Mr. Mitchell in the chest, killing him instantly. Your wife was hit once in the shoulder while diving behind the couch and once in the thigh while attempting to reach the bathroom. Mrs. Mitchell then called 911 herself, confessed to the shooting, and waited for officers to arrive while your wife received emergency first aid from the responding paramedics, he continued. I sat perfectly still, processing this information with a strange sense of detachment. Another betrayed. Spouse had done my work for me. The symmetry was almost poetic. Sandra discovering the same betrayal, following the same cabin road, burning with the same rage I'd felt just hours earlier. But where I had chosen restraint, Sandra had chosen retribution. I need to ask, Mr. Lawson, the detective continued, studying my face carefully. Did you have any knowledge of your wife's relationship with the deceased? I measured my response carefully. I had suspicions recently. My wife has been distant, secretive about her whereabouts, I answered truthfully. I paused. I never met Mr. Mitchell personally. Technically true, though I omitted the fact that I'd been standing in the woods outside their love nest just hours before the shooting. And your whereabouts last night? He asked. Home. Alone, I replied. Also true. I'd driven straight back after witnessing their betrayal, the evidence of my tracking safely locked in my truck's glove compartment. The detective nodded, apparently satisfied. Your wife's injuries are serious but not life-threatening. She'll need surgery on her shoulder and the bullet fractured her femur. She's been asking for you, he informed me. I nodded, playing the role of the concerned husband. What happens to Mrs. Mitchell? She's in custody, charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. Given her confession and the premeditated nature of the attack, she's looking at substantial prison time, he answered. I signed the necessary paperwork with mechanical precision. As the detective walked me toward Stephanie's room, I found myself oddly grateful to Sandra Mitchell. She had done what my better judgment had prevented me from doing. She had delivered justice with a clarity I couldn't have achieved. She was lying there broken and scared, expecting her husband to save her. She had no idea I was there to finish what Sandra started. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Stephanie lay propped against white pillows, her face ghastly pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Monitors beeped steadily beside her, tracking the vital signs of a woman whose life was unraveling by the second. Her left arm was immobilized in a complex sling, and a bulky bandage covered her right thigh above the blanket. When she saw me, her face crumpled with relief. Tears immediately spilled down her cheeks as she reached for me with her uninjured hand. "Eric," she sobbed, fingers grasping desperately at the air between us. Oh, God, Eric, I thought I was going to die. She just came in shooting. There was so much blood. Dave didn't move. I tried to crawl away. Her words tumbled out in broken fragments, punctuated by gasping breaths. I remained standing just inside the doorway, hands in my pockets, watching her performance with clinical detachment. They died. Police said she was his wife, Stephanie continued, her voice rising hysterically. I didn't know, Eric. I swear I didn't know he was married. He told me he was divorced. She rambled desperately. I know about Dave, I said quietly, cutting through her lies like a blade. I know about the cabin. I know about everything. The words hung in the air between us. I watched comprehension dawn on her face. First confusion, then horror as she realized that her secret life had been exposed from two directions at once. What? She whispered, her outstretched hand freezing in midair before slowly withdrawing to clutch the blanket. What are you talking about? I tracked you, Stephanie. Just like Sandra tracked Dave, I replied calmly. I stepped closer, my voice low and controlled. I followed you to that cabin last night. I stood in the woods and watched you dance with him in that red dress I bought you. I heard you call me pathetic. I heard you laugh about my cute little gifts. Her face drained of what little color remained. Her mouth opened and closed wordlessly, like a fish struggling for oxygen. No, she finally managed. Eric, no, it's not. You don't understand. It was the first time I'd been there. Dave pressured me. I was trying to end it, she pleaded frantically. Stop lying, I commanded, my voice remaining eerily calm. I've been tracking your movements for months. I know about the hotel visits during your shopping trips. I know about the divorce lawyers you've been consulting. I know about the asset photos you've been taking. I have everything, Stephanie, everything. Her shock transformed into desperate pleading. She grabbed at my shirt with her good hand, fingers twisting in the fabric. Eric, please, I made a terrible mistake. I'll do anything to fix this. We can go to counseling, I'll quit my job, I'll never see anyone from the company. Again, she begged, tears streaming down her face, mascara trailing black rivers across her cheeks. Please don't leave me. Not now. Not like this. I gently removed her hand from my shirt and placed it back on the bed. I filed for divorce this morning. The papers will be delivered here tomorrow. You should know that our prenuptial agreement contains an infidelity clause that protects all my assets and nullifies any claim to alimony, I informed her. Stephanie's pleading dissolved into stunned disbelief. What? She gasped. I've already changed the passwords to all our accounts. I've canceled your credit cards. The locks on the house will be changed by noon. I recited these facts with the same detached precision I'd used to document her betrayal. Since you're clearly in no condition to move your things immediately, I'll have them packed and placed in storage. You can contact my attorney when you're discharged. You can't do this, she whispered, shock giving way to anger. You can't just throw me away when I'm lying here shot. Where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to pay for this? She demanded, gesturing wildly at the medical equipment surrounding her. My health insurance is through your job. That's unfortunate, I said matter-of-factly, but I'm sure Dave's estate will cover it. After all, you were planning a future together in Denver, weren't you? Her face contorted with rage and desperation. You bastard! I'll fight this. I'll contest. The prenup! I'll tell everyone you knew about the affair and sent that crazy bitch to kill us, she screamed. I smiled for the first time since entering the room. By all means, tell the police you suspect your husband of conspiracy to commit murder. I'm sure Detective Coleman would be very interested in your theory. He might even ask how you know what I knew, since by your own admission, last night was the first time you'd been to the cabin, I replied coolly. She fell silent, trapped by her own lies. Dave's wife did what I was too civilized to do, I said quietly. She saved me the trouble of destroying you myself. As I turned to leave, Stephanie's voice rose to a scream behind me. You can't leave me here like this! Eric! Eric! She wailed. Closed the door on her desperate cries, walking steadily down the hospital corridor as nurses glanced nervously in the direction of the commotion. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished steel doors. a man I barely recognized, hollow-eyed but unburdened. The weight of 18 years of devotion finally lifted from his shoulders. I left her there, broken and abandoned, but the best part was still coming, watching her world burn from a safe distance. 8 months have passed since the shooting. 8 months of rebuilding a life I never knew I wanted. I observed the systematic destruction of Stephanie's existence with the same methodical attention I once devoted to tracking her betrayal. The divorce was finalized in record time. Our prenuptial agreement, drafted by my father's attorney when Stephanie was still a receptionist with dreams of management, protected every asset I'd accumulated during our marriage. I kept the house, all, savings accounts, my pension, and even her Lexus, since it was registered in my name. She received a settlement of exactly $1, a detail I requested specifically to ensure the record showed she was paid in full. The social devastation was even more complete than I anticipated. When the story broke in our local paper, Insurance. Executive killed in love nest. Alleged affair ends in bloodshed. Stephanie became a pariah overnight. Her family, the devout Catholics who had welcomed me so warmly at holiday gatherings, publicly disowned her. Her mother was overheard at Sunday Mass calling her daughter a disgrace to the Rossi name, and her father hung up when she called from the hospital. Her career imploded spectacularly. The insurance company fired her immediately, citing their morality clause and the negative publicity surrounding Dave's murder. No other firm in the industry would touch her. The scandal had spread through professional circles like wildfire, her name becoming a cautionary tale at corporate retreats. Sandra, Mitchell's case became something of a sensation. She pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter for Dave's death and aggravated assault for Stephanie's injuries, receiving a 12-year sentence with possibility of parole after 8. What no one expected was the groundswell of support from women across the country, betrayed wives who saw in Sandra a folk hero who had done what they only fantasized about. Her story inspired a podcast, a Lifetime movie, and even a support group for survivors of infidelity trauma. Meanwhile, Stephanie's life collapsed into something unrecognizable. She lives in a studio apartment above Mario's Pizza downtown, working night shifts at the Sunoco station on Route 16. Her medical debt from the shooting exceeds $200,000, and without insurance, she's been reduced to setting up a GoFundMe that raised a pitiful $347 before stalling. The physical therapist I sometimes see at the gym tells me her shoulder will never regain full mobility, and she walks with a noticeable limp that worsens in cold weather. I kept the house but couldn't stand the ghosts it contained. I gutted it room by room, replacing everything she had touched. New furniture, new kitchen, new master bath with different tiles than the ones I'd so carefully matched to her magazine clippings. I painted over her preferred earth tones with cool blues and grays. I removed every photograph, every memento, every trace of our life together, until the house became a shell I could rebuild in my own image. At work, I accepted the foreman position I'd been declining for years, no longer needing the overtime that had funded Stephanie's lifestyle. My colleagues treat me with a respect tinged with caution, the man who survived both betrayal and scandal with his dignity intact. My neighbors nod appreciatively when I mow my lawn or shovel my driveway, the daily routines of a man who needs nothing more than his own company. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how Sandra Mitchell and I are connected by the same wound, the same rage, the same broken trust. I wonder if, in another life, we might have recognized that connection before it led to bloodshed. But that thought passes quickly. What happened at the cabin was justice of a sort. I never had the courage to deliver myself. I didn't need to destroy Stephanie. She destroyed herself. Sandra Mitchell simply lit the fuse, and I had the good sense to stand back and watch the explosion from a safe distance. In the silence of my rebuilt home, I've found an unexpected peace. I no longer look for lies in casual conversations or search for betrayal in ordinary absences. I no longer braid anyone's hair or memorize coffee orders or sacrifice my own needs for someone else's comfort. The knowledge that I survived Stephanie's betrayal that I emerged not just intact, but victorious, has become its own kind of freedom. I didn't kill my wife. I didn't have to. I simply stepped aside and let karma do the work for me. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.